Namum Yoho Renge Kyo. Welcome, friends, newcomers and oldcomers. Today is a celebration and ritual of the sacred and healing, powerful and abundant veracity of peace. With its inner and outer faces, its earthly and spiritual manifestations. Thank you for being present for this moment and building this intention with us. We come together to honor through blessing and action the sacred stupa, the sacred prayer Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, the Sangha, radiating the power of peace to the corners of the world. We come together to honor through blessing and action the land and indigenous people. We honor the indigenous teachings of peace and respect for all our relations, which were and still are the heart of the native way of life on Turtle Island. We come together to honor through blessing and action four great moral spiritual leaders, international and local, who have physically passed but whose teachings and spirit remain with us. Today we honor Mahatma Gandhiji on the 150th anniversary of his birth, who taught nonviolence as a movement for justice, as well as a sacred duty and path to liberation. Gandhi changed the world forever because of teaching and striving the way of Satyagraha, and we are all beneficiaries of this great light. Gandhiji believed that the world of tomorrow is a world based on the spiritual law of nonviolence with no war and no poverty. We honor Michael Ann Busey, the co-founder of Arise for Social Justice in Springfield, who worked tirelessly with great love, encouraging the empowerment and dignity of poor people. Through her work, she illuminated the strength and intelligence of those marginalized by our economy to achieve self-liberation, and saw all issues as interconnected. We honor Francis Crowe, the Quaker peace activist and pacifist who saw the light of global unity so clearly and who organized so ceaselessly to end war and violence, who organized and educated all of us fearlessly, focusing on the central truth across issues. And we honor the late Slow Turtle, Supreme Medicine Man of the Wampanoag Nation, who graciously invited and welcomed the Nippon-san Myohoji order to build pagodas on Turtle Island, to bring medicine as a gift of love to this land and all beings who share it. Please note that Gandhi's picture is on the altar today, and Michael Ann and Francis's pictures are at the entrance to the temple, and Slow Turtle's picture you'll see as you offer incense and circumambulate the pagoda during the sacred ceremony. And lastly, we come together to honor through blessing and action the powerful aspiration of peace and the seed of Buddha nature present in each of us and in all living things. The Venerable Nichidatsu Fuji, founder of the Nippon-san Myohoji order, taught that the source of peace exists in our innate Buddha nature. A teaching of abundance, recognizing peace as a limitless pool within us. The source of inner and outer peace can be found here. When we connect to the enlightening Buddha in each of us and recognize the seed of liberation in each other. But global societal peace cannot be realized until we understand and act to ease apart the cultural and institutional systems that facilitate us harming each other and ourselves. The Venerable Nichidatsu Fuji and Gandhiji taught together that peace and nonviolence is not a state of passivity, but a state of being and a state of action. This teaching illuminates our inner selves as the front line of our struggle for equity and justice. From Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power, at its best, is love implementing the demands of justice. Justice, at its best, is love correcting everything that stands against love. I'm honored to share this moment with you all as we breathe in the autumn air and come together today to fill ourselves with the truth of peace. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. You'll find the program which Tim is passing out at this moment. So first, we're going to hear from the monks and nuns of Napanzan Myohoji to conduct the traditional sacred ceremony. And you can follow along in the program on the right side of the inside of the program, or just let the peaceful blessings, the teachings, and vows wash over you and build inside of you. After the recitation of the Lotus Sutra, all are invited to make an incense offering and to circumambulate the stupa together. And then after the traditional sacred ceremony, the Venerable Kato Shonin, head monk of the New England Peace Pagoda, will deliver a Dharma talk and welcome. Following the address, we will receive interfaith prayers from the Jewish, Christian, Islamic, and Hindu traditions, followed by a sound healing offered on French horn. Then we'll have news of peace from the Pacific Northwest Peace Pagoda and the Great Smoky Mountain Peace Pagoda, followed by Vincent Harding's Building Up a New World, which we'll sing together, and the words are at the back of the program. Then we'll have keynote messages centering around global unity and indigenous sovereignty, followed by a traditional tribal song and dance to which we will all be invited. Lastly, we close the ceremony with food and fellowship, sharing nourishment and community. Without further ado, let the peacemaking begin.
教官法と内十一その時に仏前に尻尾のとあり高さ500十250有順なりじより如実宇宙に従在すこれを消去せり汚染の乱樹あって本質三万なり無視のおまんもって言時となし宝のよらくおたれを両真ん中にしてその上にかけたりしめにみなたまらんぼせんだんの顔をいだして世界に順せりそのもろもろの問題は今後ルリ釈迦念の真珠舞への尻尾を持ってご乗し価格視天の具に至る33点はマンだらけを裏して音に供養しよの頂点有夜者現脱馬アシュラカルラキンナラアゴラが人否人との専門の苦習は一切の稽古要楽万外美学をもってことに供養して苦行尊寿三段したてまつる二音のうちより第四条をいだし込めての玉枠全財全釈迦牟尼世尊欲平等大栄教菩薩仏生5年の妙華経をもって大衆のために時たも格のごとし格のごとし釈迦牟尼世尊挫折のごときは皆これ真実のり Chapter 16. 요랑이 그 요라이 주려 혼나이 주럭 징아 독부츠라이
It has been infinite, boundless hundreds of thousands of myriad kotis, of nayutas, of kalpas, since I attained Buddhahood. For the past innumerable kalpas, I have always been expounding the law. Too many hundreds of millions of living beings in order to lead them into the way of Buddhahood. In order to save all living beings, I will expediently reveal my nirvana. All this time I have always been present, forever preaching in the Saha world. I always remain here. Even when all the living see, at the kalpa's end, the conflagration burning, tranquil is this realm of mine, ever filled with celestial beings. Gardens, groves, all kinds of temples and splendid buildings, with every kind of gem adorned. Jeweled trees abound in blossoms and fruit, a place where all the living play with glee. The devas strike the celestial drums, making constant music, showering mandarava flowers on me, the Buddha, and the great congregation. This pure land of mine is never destroyed. I too, being the Father of this world, who heals all misery and affliction, for the sake of the perverted people, though truly alive, say I am extinct, lest because always seeing me, they should beget arrogant minds, be dissolute and set in their 5 desires, and fall into evil paths. I, ever knowing all beings, those who walk or walk not in the way, according to the right principles of salvation, expound their every law at all times, making this my thought. How shall I cause all the living to enter the supreme path and speedily attain the Buddha body?
願滅以上見学二小教師戦王一略語欲悪道中合上知主上行道不行道随用小化道一切主順を愛知さで
At all times making this my thought, how shall I cause all the living to enter the supreme path and speedily attain the Buddha body?
即道十分身
Everyone, please join us in offering incense and circumambulating the stupa in either order. And if there is a long line for incense, please help the flow by circumambulating first.
I'm sorry, did you put the Yosef Shimiyoshi in the program? Yosef 155兆。155。如殺修行書天下万民少女一物上となって如意鳥安上千時一度に南無妙蓮経と唱えたてまつらんば福完全なおならさずあめ土くれおくだかず弱気のよとなりて根性には不調の災難を笑い調整の術を得年法ともに不老不死のことわり現れん時をおのごろんぜよ現在あのしょも疑いあるべからざるものなり修上無変最後仏の無常 유의강 쇼쇼주 개츠저 쇼칭합 과그도드의 성 Good day, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to join us today. We just celebrated the ritual to commemorate this pagoda's 34th anniversary. People coming from distance and local. We are very grateful that with your presence we can perform this ceremony. This year, this is a week earlier than usual because this year marks 50th anniversary of the Rajagir Peace Pagoda in India. That was the first peace pagoda arose in India in modern times, initiated by Fuji Guruji, the most venerable Nichidatsu Fuji, the founder of our order, Nippon Zammyohoji. But this peace pagoda is very significant. And for that reason, we have our monks are supposed to be there. And it's happened in October, so we needed to make this anniversary a little earlier to be ready. Anyway, this pagoda in Rajagir appeared in the right, just the place where the Shakyamuni Buddha expounded the Lotus Sutra, which we follow, which we believe the most unified teaching and wholesome teaching. And in that sutra, there is a chapter 11 called Beholding a stupa. Its appearance, it describes appearance of the stupa, a humongous, giant stupa arose up from the earth and stayed in the air, and there, very, very profound Buddha Dharma was expanded. Anyways, I can describe this a little further, but also this is 150 years of Mahatma Gandhi's birth year. It's October 2nd. So we'll be actually celebrating his birthday in a few days. In India, Mahatma Gandhi was the founding father of modern India, who led amazing movement. It was around that time when our teacher, the most venerable Nichidatsu Fuji, went to India and joined his movement. This is a quote from Guruji, Fuji Guruji. Gandhiji launched a movement to remove European sovereignty through the spinning of yarn to create a free and independent country for the 400 million Indian people. Perhaps no one believed that an independence revolution could be achieved by spinning yarn. I was no exception. There have been political revolutions since long ago, but they were resolved by force of arms. There has been no precedent in history where a revolution for independence was achieved by spinning yarn. Whether it was feasible was doubtful. Mahatma Gandhi turning of the chakra, the spinning wheel, was based on his absolute faith in the single act of spinning yarn in achieving India's independence. I pondered on this. A single person producing enough yarn for 10, 20, 100 people with a spinning machine could be, in a way, a miracle. However, if Gandhiji could bring a historically unprecedented political revolution, a free, independent country for 400 million people with the spinning of yarn, it would be truly a miracle of all miracles. There is a passage in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha's saviors of the world abide in their great transcendental powers, and in order to please living beings, they display immeasurable divine powers. This describes an invisible, non-material power in action. It didn't matter. Even if Gandhiji was the only person who believed in the success of the independence movement through spinning the yarn. There is no telling where help comes from in a world invisible to our eyes. I left Japan with the aspiration to bring tranquility to nations and peace to the world by chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo while beating the drum. This became my life's work. If one asks whether a political revolution has ever been attained by chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and beating the drum, the answer is no. Nevertheless, I do it because I believe in it. This is what I hold in common with Gandhiji. So Guruji wanted to bring Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the world and help spiritual revolution. in our world. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is a name of the ancient Buddha, which is described in the particularly chapter 16 of the Lotus Sutra we recited today, the very beginning part of that chanting these quote, "It has been infinite, boundless, hundreds of thousands of millions of kotis of nayutas of kalpas since I attained Buddhahood." This means that Buddha Shakyamuni, who dwells in our hearts and mind, is the ancient Buddha without beginning, who manifests in the Buddha bodies, in the three Buddha bodies. Three Buddha bodies meaning Dhammakaya, the Dhamma body, the truth itself, absolute truth itself. And the Buddha body in spirit, who appears, who asks salvation. And the Buddha body of incarnation, like Shakyamuni Buddha, born, actually manifested, reincarnated in this human body. Well, anyway, in manifests in three Buddha bodies, and the ancient Buddha in the eternal past described as 500 dust particle kalpas ago, ancient Buddha. Although called the Buddha nature, this ancient Buddha, it does not imply that there is a Buddha within our hearts and minds waiting to become complete. In the Buddha's last teaching called Parinirvana Sutra, there the Buddha Shakyamuni clearly described that every sentient creatures possess Buddha nature. That's not his idea. That's what he saw in his surpassed enlightenment. So, but it is a fully perfected Buddha, immemorial, whose transcendental powers and lights are yet to manifest in the human mind and heart. The ancient Buddha in our mind and the ancient Buddha in the mind of others are one in the same. When the Buddha in our minds worships the Buddha in the mind of others, in turn, the Buddha in the mind of others worships the Buddha who resides within us. When we bow in veneration toward the mirror, our reflection bows back. This is known as the veneration free of free of perception of duality of oneself and others. Reverence between oneself and others becomes one and inseparable. That is when peace becomes a reality and war ceases to exist. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. By chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, we bow, we chant to each one ourselves, focusing in others' Buddha nature, and others chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo to us. They are worshipping our Buddha nature. This is the ultimate teaching way to practice nonviolence. If we have to see the world of future, nonviolence is the way. For that purpose, we have to venerate one another, even look like wicked people who is maybe very difficult to bow to, but we have to believe. We have to believe in anyone else. We have to see the Buddha nature. We have a wonderful president making us very difficult, but we have to bow to him. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo.
Shalom, Shana Tova. My name is Shihim. This evening begins the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. This 2-day holiday is a time for reflection and renewal. During Rosh Hashanah, we reflect on the past year and we forgive ourselves and others for the ways we've fallen short of our ideals. We let go and we set our intentions for the new year. I invite you all to take a moment right now to reflect on the last year, your successes and any ways you may have missed the mark. Take a moment. Is there anything you can appreciate about yourself, others, or just life in this past year? Is there anything you need to let go of? Is there anything you'd like to do better or achieve in the coming year? In the spirit of Tikkun Olam, which is Hebrew for healing the world or mending what's broken, what impact would you like to have in the coming year? When we ask that, we know we are committing to our own healing and wellness as we commit to helping mend the outer world. It is our duty to fix what we see as broken and bring beauty and harmony to our world. No individual is responsible, though, for correcting every wrong on our planet, but each of us must rise in awareness to bring holiness to the people and the situations we are able to influence. O se shalom bimromav, hoya se shalom aleinu, ve'alko Yisrael. V'amru, Amen. The divine who makes peace in their high places shall make peace upon us and upon all living creatures. And say Amen.
Greetings and blessings from the Agape community, spiritual kin to this community, this Kanzan Myohoji. I'd like to offer a prayer, a contribution from the Christian tradition. Let us pray. Jesus, we are people who yearn for peace. We are people who struggle to find peace. Be with us. Shine down your peace on us, people of peace. Shine down your blessings on this sacred ground. The beauty and power of this sacred ground, tradition of Buddhism. Shine down your blessings on the sacred temple, holy pilgrimage site, Pagoda dedicated to peace. We yearn for peace. We come here for peace. Show us your peace. Cleanse us from all that keeps us from peace. Love of money. And as the Mahatma said, we must stand altogether aloof from power politics. The God of power politics. Cleanse us from the things of this world, the materialist things of this world. Help us, cleanse us from all that keeps us from peace. Help us to find the peace beyond understanding, the peace that is not of the things of this world. Help us to love. Jesus, you had one command, to love. Help us to love. Help us to love in that divine, non-violent love. Give us the Spirit. Help us to walk in that aura. Help us to cleanse ourselves of all the spirits that keep us from the non-violent love and peace. Revenge, bitterness, egocentric desires. Cleanse us, purify us. Help us, unite us with love, unconditional, nonviolent love, love of those who do not love us. Help us to love and understand and have compassion for those who do not want to understand us, who do not want to understand and become peaceful, become people of peace, become people of nonviolence, become disarmed. Help us to love them. As we go deeper, I would ask you, Jesus, to unite with all the religions of the world who hold unconditional compassion, especially Buddha, a singular focus this gorgeous spiritual path of truth, paved by unconditional compassion. Let us never turn our backs on the suffering of our adversaries, of our enemies, of the people who want to hurt us. Help us. Guide us into unconditional compassion, echoing Kato Shonen's words that we care about the suffering of our warlike leaders, of our greed-centered leaders. We understand that they suffer, we care. We care that they suffer. And we want them released from the suffering, and we pray for that today. We pray for that. Jesus, help us, bring us there. Let's have faith in the future. These are tough times. These are times that could be considered riddled with evil and fear and violence. Help us to give the future a chance. Give us faith in the future, knowing that we must unite as a people. Give us the courage to unite around a love that is nonviolence and a compassion that is merciful. Amen.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with all of you today and to learn and be reminded that the spirit of the Buddha is within us, and we must respect and believe in it on all occasions. My Muslim name is Yusuf, and I'm speaking from the faith of Islam to you today in humility. A clue about the religion: the number one is very important to us. God is the first and only person to whom we refer when we call Allah. God is the first cause of all things. God has no partners. And God is the sustainer and maintainer of all living things. Muslim means submission to the will of God. Muslims pray directly to God, and they are directly responsible for their own conduct. No one can intercede for us or absolve us. Islam also has no concept of original sin. Every person is born innocent, and we breathe upon the innocent child the breath of life, which is the breath of God. Muslims also revere all of the great prophets: Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and the Buddha. They have all essentially the same message, that we should submerge ourselves under the grace and blessing of God, who is most compassionate and merciful. We say peace be upon them, to be respectful and grateful, because all prophets ask us to place our faith in the one God. What all the great faiths have in common, and Islam affirms this in the Quran, and I'll be reading two short passages to confirm this, are that family values and exaltation of the truth are the same in all the great faiths. Invocations to children about morality and the avoidance of evil are universal. Love and devotion to others as children of God is at the core of all the great faiths. If one were to take a poll of believers in the faiths represented today, we would have a humane world vision based upon tolerance of differences, appreciation of diversity, and the same hopes and aspirations for our children. I know all of us hope and will do our best to build a communion from the commons of the great faiths. The Quran is divided into chapters called surahs, and I'll be reading briefly from the second surah and a later one. And I must say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, all praise to God who is most compassionate and merciful. from Surah number 2, verse 136. Say ye, we believe in God and the revelation given to us, and to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, and that given to Moses and Jesus, and that given to all prophets from their Lord. We make no difference between one and another of them, and we bow to God in Islam. And from a later surah, number 49, verse 13, O mankind, we created you from a single soul, male and female, and made you into nations and tribes, so that you may come to know one another. Truly the most honored of you in God's sight is the greatest of you in piety. God is all-knowing and all-aware. As we say, Alhamdulillah, God is great, and Khurafis, may you go in peace.
Hello, everyone. We seem to be invoking the spirit of Gandhiji today as part of Katoshanen's talk, and just the big connection and relationship between Gandhi and Guruji. Sister Claire was sharing with me that when they met, there was so much emotion and so much connection between the two of them, and it resulted in Gandhi including Nam-myoho Renge Kyo as part of the ashram morning puja. So we are going to chant Gandhi's favorite bhajan, his devotional song. And you have the words, but Ram, the Lord Ram is the embodiment of Dharma, right duty or righteousness and virtue. And Ram was also the mantra of Gandhi. And you may know that when he died, that was the last word on his lips, was Ram. So Ram is the one who's attained all spiritual knowledge, uplifter of those who've fallen from the path of righteousness and virtue. Mother Sita is the daughter of the earth. She signifies selfless love and purity. Mother Earth gives us everything she has without asking anything in return. Everything we get comes from that purity. O beloved Lord Ram and Mother Sita, we praise you for what you are and what you signify.
And the meaning of the verses which was added by Gandhi, Ishwar Allah Tero Naam, means people call you by many names. Some call you God, some call you Ishwar, some call you Allah. But you are the one and the only one Brahma, infinite divinity that is within us all, and we are all within you. We all request that this eternal wisdom of humankind prevails. Sabko sammati de Bhagwan means bless everyone with this very wisdom that we are all the product of the same matter and consciousness, and that all of us strive toward the path of dharma and virtue. Please feel free to join us to sing the verses when we are singing now. Raghupati Raghav Raja Ram Patit Pavan Sitaram. Jai Raghupati Raghav Raja Ram Patit Pavan Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Bhaj Pyare Tu Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Bhaj Pyare Tu Sitaram. Jai जय जय रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरो नाम, सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरो नाम, सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। जय जय रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। राम रहीम करीम समान, हम सब हैं उनकी संतान। राम रहीम करीम समान, हम सब हैं उनकी संतान। जय जय रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। सब मिल मांगे ये वरदान, सबको रहे मानव का ज्ञान। सब मिल मांगे ये वरदान, सबको रहे मानव का ज्ञान। जय जय रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। हाथ से कर लो अपना काम, मुख से बोलो सीताराम। हाथ से कर लो अपना काम, मुख से बोलो सीताराम। जय जय रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम, सब मिल बोलो सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम, सब मिल बोलो सीताराम। जय जय रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। पतित पावन सीताराम।
I just want to put a very warm word of introduction. Kaneda Senji Shonin he's been practicing at the Bainbridge Island in the greater Seattle area for many years. And Hirabeto Shonin, another wonderful monk from the same dojo in the same practice. And what we think is really a first-class miracle through the practice of these brother monks and the monks and nuns who preceded them, what has happened is permission has finally, after 39 years, been granted to build a pagoda. So the amazing details to follow.
Namu myoho renge kyo. Namu myoho renge kyo. Namu myoho renge kyo. Thank you very much, Korean-san, to inform about our recent event. So almost a month ago, August 24, the Saturday, we just held the grand purification ceremony of the Pacific Northwest Peace Pagoda. And that location is very next to the world #1 concentration of the nuclear warhead, the Bangor Navy submarine base. And just the location of the pagoda was also, just as a few months ago, there was a river, and also 37 years old bush and trees. And in
this June to July, before our annual Peace Walk, Oregon, Washington State, we cleared up in preparation of the land. And that's same location that 39 years ago, the Fuji Guruji visited. We tried to build a peace pagoda again. So actually, that location is also between the Navy base is just 100 feet from the fence. So this is not the temple, Nippon Zomehoji temple property. And also, this is also the first, supposed to be the first peace pagoda in Pacific Ocean side of North American continent. So, and actually, the 39 years ago, it's mean like 1981, when Fuji Guruji visited Ground Zero. The name of the place is Ground Zero Center for Nonviolent Peace Action. So the American grassroots movement started the same President Reagan time. The nuclear that's Pacific Northwest is the closest point of the Soviet Union in mainland of the United States. So they, the government would like to build the world's biggest nuclear warhead concentration place. So, and then American grassroots nonviolent peace movement started there. And then in the same time, Fuji Guruji came to United States and with also another young monks, and many senior monks. So Fuji Guruji had a opportunity to visit Ground Zero, the site. And then he was so impressed to American peace activists, never hesitated to imprison or go to jail. So, and that's a strong impression that's offered to him. And he proposed to build a peace pagoda in that property. So that's supposed to be our first peace pagoda in United States. That is 5 years before inauguration ceremony of this New England Peace Pagoda. They got a permission to building from the county, but that's created the big uproar and conflict and struggle between local and Navy, many people. So they started to build a pagoda, but on the way, the dome, a contemporary temple, and also Christ Church, a Christian church, it was burned out. That's a later FBI record informed to Marine Corps military person put the fire. And then the big struggle and between local and that area. So, and county finally ordered to stop the construction of the pagoda. And river and many remains existed last 39 years. So, and this monk and body monk, Hilberto Shonin, originally from Cuba and New York City, and I also from Japan, and that moved to Washington State, Bainbridge Island Temple, the 2003. And then the summer, we rejoined the movement of Ground Zero, annual action, the Hiroshima, Nagasaki Day, Mother's Day, and Martin Luther King Day action. And also, a few years later, after we moved there, we started to peace walk from Oregon and Washington State. And last 16 years, we have a tie with American peace movement people. I think it's become strong. And then 5 years ago, the annual meeting, the Ground Zero and us decided to build a pagoda there. And we spent almost 5 years to get the permission. This March, the name is Tom Rogers, the Ground Zero member. He is a retired former nuclear submarine captain. Click the our application. He became peace activist. And he got also 2 months later, May 17, he also got permission from the county, local county, Kitsap County. So then preparation and peace walk, and after the peace walk, we started to prepare the ground purification ceremony. Mostly the monks and nuns here came to our, the land, the property, and also monk from Okinawa, monk from another part of Japan came to the ceremony. And 150 people gathered at August 24, the ceremony. And we very happily could held the ceremony. So that's process. And we don't have so many supporters, we don't have so many members, but just step by step, we want to start to build a pagoda, probably from this November. And before I finish to talk, I want to introduce, inform, and also share the co-founder of Jim Douglas, the main speaker, keynote speaker of the ceremony, that he's the last word for the participant. We are united across this fence and around the world by the global fire that threatens us. We are responsible for abolishing it. The Peace Pagoda will embody that responsibility in a way that will build the peace movement. Our opponent were right. We shall continue building the Peace Pagoda in our lives, step by step, until all of humanity can live in peace. Nammyo Ho Renge Kyo.
Buenos dias. Good day, brothers and sisters. As you know, Washington, the area, is indigenous Squamish. Seattle is named after Seelith, who made peace with the soldiers then, and they burned down the Longhouse shortly thereafter and desecrated his site on the Squamish Reservation. But I wanted to just add that the fire is still here. The house is still on fire. And Columbus, you know, got there early to the Caribbean. So here we are struggling. And the things that happened to this order, Guruji, Mahatma Gandhi, is more than serendipity. Some magic happens. Our project manager for the pagoda in the northwest, daughter hugged Guruji some 39 years ago, and he is now the project manager out of nowhere to build the pagoda. As Shoni said, Tom Rogers, retired nuclear submarine base, Veterans for Peace, did all the front work to pass this approval for the permit. Also, I wanted to say that the two soldiers were twin brothers, and through the Freedom of Information Act, they found out that they were the ones. They told the monks about suing, and the monks said, no, we don't want to do anything. Forgive. 39 years later, we have now a member who's a CIA agent, retired CIA agent on our staff at Ground Zero, retired military people from Veterans for Peace. And the two soldiers found the Buddha in the temple, the structure, and the cross, and smashed it to pieces. They knew the power of Buddha and the cross. Smashed it to pieces. They knew the strength, because 39 years later, it arises out of the ground. Nam-myo ho renge kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
ありがとうございました。Thank you very much.
I'll just introduce. Thank you, Kaneda Shonin, Hibeta Shonin. It was just mentioned that prior to becoming a monk, Gilberto Shonin did walk on the Middle Passage pilgrimage, and prior to that, he worked at UMass Amherst for a little while. So, nice big connection of all kinds. I am really so happy to introduce my sister, Denise Laffin Anjasan. Denise Anjasan and Utsumi Shonin-san have been building an exquisite, unbelievably beautiful peace pagoda in the Smoky Mountains, which are themselves exquisite, heavenly mountains. And so it's, unfortunately, there's a little few miles between there and here, and that we don't get down there enough. But it's a very, very profound pagoda that is really emerging and bringing a blessing to especially the entire southeast region of this country. And it is also very close to, interestingly enough, once again, the, thank you, Oak Ridge nuclear weapons, place where nuclear weapons are assembled. It is also they're not on firing range, but that's where they're actually put together and stored. So, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo.
Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Good afternoon. Thank you, Kato Shonin, Claire Anjasan, for giving us the second year a little time to talk about Smoky Mountains Peace Pagoda. I know many, many speakers, so I try not to say too much. That's a discipline. We are building the Great Smoky Mountains Peace Pagoda. We've been doing this for a while. We started it because we were doing a peace walk from Atlanta to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is where the uranium for the Hiroshima bomb was enriched. It is also the most active nuclear weapons facility, continues to be in the United States. And they continue to try to expand it. So, so through this peace walk, this land appeared for the Peace Pagoda. So we started building a Peace Pagoda, actually started the building of temples and things like that in 2002. The actual Peace Pagoda started in 2010, and we are about 3/4 of the way there. It's really beautiful, it's big, it's great, and do not ask me when it's going to be finished. I have no idea. I used to say we will be the third Peace Pagoda in the United States, but now that they've started at ground zero, we're going to be third or fourth. I'm not sure. So, but what I do want to say, what I know about Peace Pagodas is that, first of all, most of us, I think, are going to Rajagir, 50-year anniversary of the first Peace Pagoda built by Nippon Zamyohoji outside of Japan this year. And that is extraordinary landmark, and Kato Shonin spoke so wonderfully about it before. There's a Peace Pagoda, 2 Peace Pagodas now under construction here in the United States, along with 2 Peace Pagodas that have been existing here. Of course, this is the first one, and we have one in Grafton. There's another Peace Pagoda under construction in South India, and there's one under construction in Nepal. And there's already completed Peace Pagodas in all of those places. And this is extraordinary for an order as small and, let's be honest, aging as Nippon Zamyohoji. But I think more, I can only, as a white American, speak about the Peace Pagodas in this country. I feel very, very deeply that the peace pagodas in this country, while they are, of course, Guruji's work here, and we as Nipponza Myohoji, small and aging, I'm the youngest one up here, and I just turned 59 yesterday. No, don't, not, that's not congratulations. That's a little bit concerning. But that these peace pagodas, the inspiration of Guruji, and being carried out by Nipponza Myohoji with great faithfulness and great dedication, but they are the responsibility of the American people. We, as American people, know that we live under the most militarized country in the world, and that we're letting everybody know that we have the biggest guns. We here are all people who seek peace, but to be a person of peace in such a country as this requires us every day to dig a little deeper to try to understand what that means, because we benefit from the military might of this country. And so it's a great conflict within us. And that's why I feel that these peace pagodas arising in the United States, it's miraculous. And it is our responsibility for those and for the ones that are existing. It's not the responsibility alone of this small and aging and wonderful and eccentric and oddball order called Nipponza Myohoji. It is for us as Americans to keep digging deeper to what does it mean that we build a community, that we build a place, that we erect something of this magnitude, that you don't even go inside, but that you come, it draws you here for some reason. And we all have to figure out what that reason is. And we all have to figure out what our part is, what our role is. We have no place to go, because it's serious now. So that's all I have to say. Please come to Smoky Mountains. We'd love to have you.
This song that we're going to sing, as you can see on your program, was the words were put together by Dr. Vincent Harding, who spoke here quite a few years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. But these are the words that have inspired me to keep moving on in spite of everything. We are building up a new world. We are building up a new world. We are building up a new world. Builders must be strong. Courage, sisters, don't get weary. Courage, brothers, don't get weary. Courage, people, don't get weary, though the way be long. Rise, shine, give God glory. Rise, shine, give God glory. Rise, shine, give God glory. Children of the light. We are building up a new world. We are building up a new world. We are building up a new world. Builders must be strong. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tim. So I'm going to read this official citation from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that was presented to the monks and nuns of the New England Peace Pagoda for 34 years of unparalleled, courageous, steadfast, and faith-filled work for justice and peace. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to, and a copy thereof transmitted to the Clerk of the Senate. Signed by the President of the Senate, Karen Spilka, the Clerk of the Senate, Michael Hurley, the Senate and the State Senator, Joanne Comerford, on this date, September 29th. So it's official.
Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Lashana Tova. So, I had this great opportunity to spend a little over 3 weeks in Russia this month, and I went there with Sharon Tennyson's delegation. She's been putting together, kind of curating delegations of Americans to visit Russia since the very year we started building this pagoda. So she's been doing this for quite some time. And I had been wanting to take this, I'd been preparing to take this trip for quite some time and had been preparing to a great degree in the light of the recent unilateral denunciations of the ABM and the INF treaty by the United States, as well as just a real simple, kind of obvious observation that if there's going to be a future, it's going to be a future where Americans and Russians are partners. So anyway, earlier this month, I spent these 3 weeks in Russia with Sharon and 49 other American and Canadian delegates. We spent a wonderful week in Moscow together, studying and doing research and enjoying that extraordinarily transnational cosmopolitan city. And before we got together, weeks later, in St. Petersburg, we all fanned out across Russia, 20 different regional cities throughout Russia, from Crimea to Siberia, and with the basic project of meeting as many Russians as we could, but also we also had a project of answering 21 questions about the cities we were visiting. Questions like, what is the general look of your regional city? Was it clean? Was it dirty? Was there litter? What was the general look of people on the street? Primary modes of transportation, accessibility of public transportation, conditions of roads. Were there baby strollers and small children visible on the sidewalks and parks? What was the state and plenitude of public parks and public spaces? What were the food markets like? Did the cities appear to have quite a few small businesses as well as big ones? What did you observe regarding the teenagers there? So the week I spent in the southern city in the Caucasus, the city of Krasnodar, and out of sheer good luck was hosted by the Rotary Club of Krasnodar, and thus allowed to just have a week of packed days viewing the city primarily through the workplaces
Krasnodar and places where people worked. I was just in countless workplaces and seeing Russian people through that lens. I also we spent a number of evenings discovering the Russian people of Krasnodar through the city's jazz scene, its Buddhist center. I'm now Facebook friends with a young man who built a pagoda a couple summers ago in Siberia. So we were kind of sharing pagoda pictures in the city of Krasnodar. There was a wonderful evening with the very independent newspaper editors and writers of Novaya Gazeta that had been around for decades. Anyway, it was just a wonderful time, but I wanted to basically, I met a lot of Russians and found them extraordinarily relaxed, friendly, open-minded, generally really quick to laugh, and found very similar situation in Moscow and in St. Petersburg, although those are huge metropolitan cities. I should also say that the other people in our delegation made very similar observations throughout the country in terms of the state of culture now in Russia, and in terms of the research about the cities, the criteria of like observing certain things in cities. 19 of 20 of those cities were found to be in remarkably good shape. So there's a different Russia than the one in the U.S. mass media that actually exists. I'll jump to. I'd like to end on a note that a kind of heartening note. A number of days after I got back earlier this week, the University of Massachusetts purchased 500 boxes of the collected life work of the famed whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg, who has been hired as a distinguished researcher at the Boyce Library. You can see the library if you stand up here in front of the baby Buddha. So he'll be part of our community. For those who aren't that familiar with Daniel Ellsberg, he worked as a nuclear war planner between 1958 and 1971, when he went underground with the Pentagon Papers. But that's all coming to Amherst. So I find that really heartening. So without further ado, I want to introduce our good friend John Schuchart here, who also spent time in Russia this year. So, John.
You know, you could kind of feel Hank trembling, couldn't you? You know what? He fell in love with Russia. He fell in love with the Russian people. I fell in love. I fell in love. And I thought, what am I going to say up here? I think what I'm gonna do is bring you a heart full of love from Russia. They love you. They are not a war-making people, not an inch or an ounce. They're a quiet people on the bus, in the subway, in the restaurant. Oh, you can hear yourself speak. It's social. It's beautiful, isn't it? Litter. We were there on May 9th when the families remembered the millions killed in the Second World War. And they marched, they filled the streets of St. Petersburg, a river that went on and on and on, carrying pictures. And it's amazing how these photographs looked right in your eye from 1940, the 1940s, in uniforms. The dead and the survivors from defending St. Petersburg from the Nazi invasion. And what they are is a people who love their country, have defended their country, and will defend their country at any cost. You know, it's so different as a U.S. veteran, this feeling of a gun in your hand when your family is at your back, than in going to invade Afghanistan or Vietnam or El Salvador or Iraq or Saudi Arabia or all of the places that the U.S. has gone abroad, or Europe for that matter, or Japan. At the end of that parade of about 1 million people that was so emotional, Bruce Gagnon from the Keep Space for Peace in Brunswick, Maine, which I recommend to all of you, was interested in litter. So he walked back the entire route, I think 4 or 5 miles, and you know what? He found litter. He picked it all up. It didn't quite fit in his hand. Less than a handful of litter from 1 million people on a 4-mile stretch of St. Petersburg. The cleanliness, the reverence. Carrie and I couldn't get on a subway without somebody stepping up and giving us their seat. And they didn't know we were Americans because many people came up and spoke to us in Russian. So we were passing. It was great. Yeah. I wanted to just leave with you 4 points that I think are significant and important for us to understand. I wanted to give a talk about JFK and the unspeakable, Khrushchev and Kennedy saving all of our lives in 1962. And I thought, this was in the height of the Cold War. Where did the Cold War begin? How did this start? How did our World War II ally who suffered 20 million dead compared to our 500,000, where did it start? And I have the answer for you. I know exactly, and I know exactly when. We were in Yalta, where the big 3 met, Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill. Imagine that, the world of flames, millions dying, battlefields everywhere. And 3 men are deciding the fate of the whole human family. Secret deals, trade-offs, negotiations, treaties, 3, and they were called the Big 3. The next meeting was in Potsdam, a suburb of Berlin. On the way, Truman found out about the Trinity test, July 16, 1945. He had the atomic bomb in his back pocket, and he began to kick Stalin around. Right there in Potsdam, July 1945. And what happened next? The willingness to burn the entire population of 2 vast cities to death. That's where the terrorizing fear that's descended on the earth began. Potsdam, and then Churchill came to Missouri and gave the Iron Curtain speech the next year. It was irreversible. Well, I mention it because, of course, we're in the depths of a new Cold War. And it's manufactured, it's created, it's intentional. The military needs it, the corporations need it. I don't want any of you to be distracted. The Mueller report, whistleblowers, impeachment, all of this window dressing, all this dust they're throwing in our eyes. It's nuclear weapons. That's the only issue before us. And it's not the Russians, it's here. As Sister Denise said, it's our responsibility. Mind control. I experienced maybe for the first time how deeply I was a victim of mind control my whole life. I would say Hiroshima, and they would say, what about Pearl Harbor? I would say Trident, and they'd say, what about the Russians? Mind control, how deeply Russia and the use of Russia to silence us, to neutralize the peace movement. The last point, you try to tell them about the Kennedy assassination. They say, I don't believe much in conspiracy theories. Just reflect on how much we are victims of mind control. And we are this is probably the biggest mind control operation going on right now. Mueller, whistleblower, etc., etc. While they are plundering the public treasury, plundering the earth, expanding and encircling Russia, they are not threatening us. We are threatening them in every conceivable way. The last point is, what's the purpose of NATO? We need to understand clearly, because they talk about the international world order, NATO, so forth. The United States is in command of NATO. It is only an adjunct. So when we invaded and destroyed Afghanistan, there were 45 nations that were part of that invasion and destruction. And what is the purpose of NATO? It's to expand the British-American Empire. Remember this one. In everything that happens in the world, it's English-speaking, white, British, American superiority and dominance. Oh, you let the Italians in a little bit. They can have a peace, but they don't count. Or the Japanese. It's British-American dominance. And the overall strategy is, and this is from the Supreme Commander of NATO a few years, he's quoted as saying this, the purpose of NATO: keep Germany down, the United States up, and Russia out. They want to completely prevent, Hank, exactly what is necessary, what must happen, the friendship between Germany and Russia, between America and Russia, the friendship that is longing to happen, that the hearts of the people are filled with, to embrace one another, to share the incredible architecture, art, music, culture, warmth, and love of the people of Russia. So from Russia, a heart full of love to every one of you.
Ka nutkwa, kwa wene nokush, ka wetowank. I chose to greet you in the Nipmuc language, that being that we always need to acknowledge that we are on Nipmuc land now. This is an indigenous homeland going back 10,000 years to the last glacier. The Nipmuc live here now, as well as the descendants of the Pecumtuck people. So it's very important that we acknowledge and respect that. What the Nolan Pika Project does is endeavor to make a bridge between that acknowledgement and action. So we have a number of projects. Our purpose is, as was stated, to acknowledge, encourage, support the local indigenous cultures through events, music, art, artisan work. Two projects that we're working on, we're in the final stages, one being a pollinator project. Talk about hands-on. We have enlisted indigenous storytellers to come into our schools to remind the students, the youngsters, about the balance between human creatures and non-human creatures, to work on that balance and to find a way to restore that reciprocity and balance. And so the Pollinator Project involves basically an indigenous storyteller talking about that, a little bit of science, explaining who the pollinators are, why they're under such stress, and then a hands-on project, either making seed balls or making shelters for mason bees, etc. So that is a major effort these days that we are trying to do, again, to provide an active effort to the acknowledgement that I just mentioned. The other thing that I would like to also mention is we're in the final stages of developing a 2020 project. As you know, the Pilgrims showed up in 1620, and much like Columbus that was mentioned earlier, a lot of issues flowed from that particular arrival. But here we are 400 years later. On the coast, the Plymouth 400 campaign is very, what would I call it, skillfully mounting a marketing campaign. And we all out here in the Connecticut River Valley said, wait a second, we're here, and our indigenous people suffered greatly from the impact of those first arrivals and the ensuing generation of colonization that is still going on. So what we are doing is developing a series of workshops, teach-ins, presentations up and down the Connecticut River. We're going to be starting in March at Dartmouth College, and we, as an organization, our job is to find a venue, find the funding, and take care of logistics and turn the program over to the indigenous people here. The Elnu Abenaki, the Nulhegan Abenaki will take charge of that program, starting at Dartmouth College and at various stops down the river, from Dartmouth to Brattleboro and Northfield to wind up at Montague. I hate to say Turner's Falls because there's a whole story behind how that came to be and the atrocities that happened at the falls. So we'll refer to either Montague or Peskiomskut or Squamskut, which is a good fishing place. That was the name, the indigenous name of that. At that point, the Nipmuc presenters will take over, and we will proceed down from Montague to the Greenfield Community College, to Amherst, and then in Springfield, where the Nipmuc will continue. And at that point, we will take a break and wrap up our 2020 observations at the mouth of the Connecticut River. So those are the types of things we do. We try to put our words into action, and we take care of the land, we take care of the people, we take care of the non-human brethren that we have, and that's not much more that I could ask for in my lifetime. So again, to say goodbye and peace in the Nipmuc language, goodbye, friend. It's not totally goodbye, it's peace. The word akwene nitop, peace, friend. Thank you.
Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you. In the words of our elder historian Tall Oak, a member of the Pequot Wampanoag, the 2020 commemoration, which is already in the planning stages on both sides of the Atlantic, definitely must not be an occasion for self-gratulation, but will have to be a time of deep introspection and reflection by the society that was transplanted here on Indian land. If this isn't understood, then we will be losing for all time future generations the extremely vital teaching moment the Creator is giving us at these extremely troubling times we're living in. 2020, the year which marks the 400th anniversary of the landing of the Mayflower at Plymouth, Massachusetts, will soon be upon us. During each of the last 4 years, 2016 through 2019 and leading up to 2020, the New England Peace Pagoda has walked for several weeks as a dedicated prayer to this great mirror of 400 years, how 400 years can become for all of us a divine gift, offering a giving opportunity to learn and reflect upon the actual history of the relationship between indigenous people and settlers. It is a relationship which became one of incalculable loss for indigenous people and seemingly limitless gain for the settlers. But the material power built up over 4 centuries we now see directly threatens the precious interconnectedness of all life on Earth. Science gives us formulas that dictate the kind of changes we must immediately make to protect life. Facing and learning the history of conquest of the peoples and land of what became known as the United States teaches our hearts and souls how we must change in order to finally understand more fully our common humanity and spirituality, how we are to live in peace on this beautiful Mother Earth. Indigenous people hold in their homes, in their bones, the knowledge of the great violence and greed of the foundation of this country. Through great sacrifice, indigenous people have somehow held on to the spiritual teachings given to them on this land so long ago by the Great Spirit. Those teachings and relational ways of living together coming from the divine wisdom of the Great Spirit can universally help to guide us to a peace that we can build together. The learning of this history will naturally guide to change, to transform our thinking, to repair our relationships with indigenous people and the earth. We cannot undo the pain of the past, but we can, through facing the past, find a way to sow a new seed, a seed of deep respect, of sharing, of peace. As Maya Angelou said, history, if faced, no matter how painful, does not have to be lived again. A great learning awaits us, a great transformation and healing which will be for the good of everyone, one's ancestors and all the children to come, as well as for all living today. Let us commit ourselves to this moment of courage and love. Let us help one another with it. Listening finally to the voices of the indigenous people, their stories of this history, of the circumstances faced today, and the spiritual wisdom meant to govern human life on earth. Thank you.
Thank you for all coming here. When I think about coming here, I feel the spirit of my father here. Many a times he tried to bring me up here to spend time with Katsushani. Pictures of him helping to build this Peace Pagoda. And in the beginning, I didn't really understand, the deep commitment or the deep relationship that he had. And when I think about all of the years that we have been dealing with a new group of people, we've been on this land for 12,000 years. The last 400 years have been the most difficult that we've had to survive. We've been on a journey, a circle of life. And it's been something that we had learned over the years, that to live in harmony with Mother Earth, that we only take what we need. And when we do take things, we give thanks to the Great Spirit for taking that life, for so forth. And this last 400 years, the first things that happened to us, someone came ashore with disease and it killed 90% of our people. Such a traumatic situation to actually realize how powerful that is, to lose so many people and not knowing where this came from. How do you deal with? And then when the Mayflower came ashore, they came with their women and children. we realize that these people are coming, and there's not much that we can do about that. We found ourselves dealing with a group of people who had a totally different way of life. We live with the land. They were here to exploit the land for capitalism, for materialism. It's something that they actually made an effort to teach us how to do that, to have some respect, some regard for personal wealth and so forth. So, but it has been a journey, you know, like we've been in all the wars, whether we liked it or not. We've lost many of our people. They were sacrificed. Some of our people have been around the world in whaling and things like that, just to, as I would say, forced labor in many respects, but it's all part of the learning experience. When I have met many people from all over the world that have come here and are trying to rejoice or trying to find a new way of life. And it has been at not only our expense, but all of our expenses. There was so many resources here. And if it was used properly, there would be no poverty, there would be no hunger. And unfortunately, it hasn't been the lessons that we learned. They wouldn't listen to what we had to say about living in harmony with the earth. And here we are, the reactions of the climate, of Mother Nature, teaching us that there is a better way, there is another way to do things. And we didn't learn that lesson. I appreciate the words of Tim and David that came before me. They filled in a lot of the blanks that I thought about. And my biggest concern is that we as human beings can all come together and try to correct some of the wrongs that we've gone through and leave our future generations with something that they can hold on to and start to develop from the pieces that are left to them, a new future and carry on for theirs. There's a long road to travel, and it's very important that we as human beings can come together and look each other in the eye and blaze a new path for the future. I find something that my father found was about praying, about the need for us to all be looking for and asking for a new way, and that we as people can hold each other's hands and share our energy and our spirits and pass that on to the future. And I don't have much more to say on that except thank you. And my cousin here, Anawan, is going to ask you all to come and dance with us, a round dance, something, a continuous circle that we can all hold hands and share our energy and our prayers for our future generations. Thank you.
Waywinabujo, good people, our good brothers here, been sitting here for a long time. This morning we got up early in Grafton, and it was the most beautiful ceremony, led by little tiny lights and doing all of our prayers and our songs and walking through the woods. And it is something to sing and to live every day that kind of life. That is a freedom that we have. And I am here because of a little boy, a sweet little boy. And his name was Nawakamig. And Nawakamig was, I'm at the center of the universe. And as a little baby, he was loved and cherished, as all of our children should be. But then when he was about 5, he was yanked from his home. And he was thrown into a boarding school where they cut his hair and they put him in solitary confinement when he wouldn't hit the other boys or punish them. And all he wanted was to go back home to his mother. I want my mom. How come I can't go home? And why do the other children get letters from their mom and I don't? And he started doubting himself, and he started growing hard. And he lived that life so much when he went into the army, and he was a warrior, and he fought. And as a many Indian people throughout this world, this man, now a comic, he fought for our people. When a young man was beaten to death in Minneapolis, St. Paul, he came there and he brought the American Indian movement together. And he said, justice must be served. We're going to do this. And eventually they did things like taking over the BIA building and taking over Wounded Knee. And he had a lot of hate in his heart. And I met this young man back in about 1975. And as a little teeny woman, I looked up to this giant of a man, this hero man, this man that spoke with a big voice. And I was in awe. I didn't even want to talk to him. He was so huge in his cowboy boots and his long hair. You know how you get around someone that's like that? Well, we had a friendship that grew over the years, and he helped me in many, many ways. But he was helped by these people that are on the stage now because they taught him love. They taught him forgiveness. They taught him a way to live with the horrors of this life, but to pray in peace. And this is what he did with our longest walks. He said, we are peaceful warriors. We are going to pray for peace, and we will be that way. And he didn't get that way overnight. He said, I want to learn those things of my Ojibwe culture. But he attended boarding school. And how is he going to learn these things? And then he meets me, Grandma Beatrice, and I'm Tlingit, but I know the Ojibwe ways. I know their songs. I know their traditions. I know their medicines, and I know these things. So he clung on to me, and he told me many things about finally going to that boarding school and looking in those trunks. And there were all the letters that his mother wrote him that they refused to give him. And they sent him money to go home. I want you home, son. And he cried at her grave, saying, Mama, I didn't know. I thought you didn't love me. But you do love me. And so he spent his life in love. Well, that's another story of a man. His name is White Pine. We call him Shinwak Kuns. And this man lived way before Dennis. And there was a boarding school in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And they did the same thing to our children. Many of our children were killed in those boarding schools. Little unmarked graves. So many things that happened to our children that America chooses to forget. But Shinwak Kun said, there is a way. There is a good way. And it's with love. And with that way, we are going to raise our children. Our children are the hope of the world. Our children are the ones. And Shinwak Kun's White Pine, he was a powerful man. His family passed on medicines to me when I was sick. And he wrote this song for the children. He said, here we are in this place. Have we remembered our beautiful things that we were taught by our great-great-great-grandparents? Did we remember our original instructions from the Creator in the West, the Creator in the North and the South and the East? Did we remember to give thanks, to be honorable, and to cherish that one thing that was given to us, peace of heart? Did we remember our original instructions? Many didn't, but many are trying to pick that up now. And he wrote a song for the future. And this is called the Prophecy Song. And it's also in our great teachings of the migration from the East that went to the west and then back. And in this prophecy song, they said in the 8th generation, the people of all colors will come together in sisterhood and brotherhood. And our children will look at each other and they will be happy to see one each other. They won't see any difference by the color of their skin, by language. They will play together in love. And that is a prediction that will happen. But the thing that has to happen is that we have to pick up the things that were left behind with that love. So this is a prophecy song. It's sung in our Medewan Lodge. Ambe Majada, come, come, my children. In the morning, Gibwa Bidaben, Kinimigomin Ganani Gengoba. Pick up the things that were left behind. And that's what I thought of when we prayed this morning. When we went in that darkness and we watched that sun come up. When we saw these beautiful things, that's what I thought of. And that is what I'm going to sing to you, the prophecy song. Gimme go me ganani gengo ba. Gimme go me ganani gengo ba. Ambe majada give wabi dabin. Gimme go me ganani gengo ba. Give wabi dabin, give me go me ganani gengo ba. Ambe majada, give wabi dabin, give me go. Gimme go me ganani gengo ba. Ambe majada kiwa bidabin. Gimme go me ganani. Thank you, kind people, for letting me be here and represent the grandmothers of our lodge and the grandfathers, and to represent the children of all of our nations. For all of you here of good heart and have peace of mind and peace of heart, I humbly thank you so much for your kindness of being here. Miigwech nakani kana.
Kwe. Square Kwasani Tompak, Wani Nukan, Wani Kisak, Kataptanama what you want me to Tonkosak, Kataptanama what you want me Pakamtak, Komanash, Neo, Hoyanishne. I greet you in the language of the people who have resided here for many millennia. In doing so, as a Mashpee Wampanoag from the southeastern region of this state, I want to first acknowledge those who came before us here in this land, the lands of the Pakamtuk, many of which who may not reside here anymore, to call this home. However, I want to pay honor and tribute to them and their spiritual energy, which remains here. And I also want to remind folks, hearing all the talks since my time here, a lot of it seems to be mentioning the issues that face us all across this world when we all work towards peace. And seems a lot of it is focused on the human aspect of that. And as a Native person, regardless of what tribe and nations we come from, Indigenous people are always reminded that it's the earth that we are here to worship, not ourselves, not our collected wealths, not our political or religious differences. There's many things that separate us as human beings, many things. And if you focus on those, separation is probably all that will come from that. But when we think collectively, we only have one place to call home, and that's this planet. And regardless of what country of origin or language you speak or how you're raised with your belief systems, none of that can take place without the environment, without the resources each and every one of us consume. We're consuming as we speak. We're breathing oxygen. The oxygen that these trees, they lend to us, and we need that. So I just want to remind folks that when you think of world peace, when you think of harmony, that word harmony is synonymous with peace. And when I think of harmony, I think of my relationship with my environment, not just my people that I share this land with. So personally, I want to thank each and every one of you for making your choice. A conscious decision was made today that brought you here. I'm not sure what made you determine that that was the right move for you, but as an individual, you have found your way here on this piece of land. And I just want everyone to know that when we part here and we hear the words of the people who have spoken, I hope that you can open your minds and your heart, and especially your spirit, to hear the words that are not spoken in a foreign language, such as English, or any language we may even understand that comes through our mouths. However, there is a language among the land itself. The teachings are here. When we lost our language, it sounds awkward even saying that now, but when we assumed we had lost our language, our linguist, when she was sharing her vision of bringing the language back to the people, she had met an elder from another community who reminded her, your language is not lost, it's you who are lost. And as human beings, many of us are not allowed to follow our original teachings, and therefore we are lost. However, the teachings lie within the land. This very Peace Pagoda reminds me of the same teachings I see and I embrace every day when I'm out in this natural world. I notice the pagoda is round. I don't feel comfortable in square buildings. There's a lot of reasons why. And a lot of times it collects negative energy and traps them in the corners of that particular building, that structure. And I happen to notice much of the architecture here follows in that synonymous teaching that the world is round. The berries, the seasons, the cycles, they're cycles. We don't think in a timeline fashion. We don't think linear, because there's a beginning and then there's an end. And for us as Native people, it's continuous. And I just want to remind folks that those teachings are there. We didn't want to ram them down the throats of the colonists when they arrived here. Anuksak, the strangers is what we called them. We didn't look down on them because of their color of their skin, the way they dressed, any of it. We realized, as my cousin Jim just mentioned, they brought their women and children. They need help. And that is what we do as Indigenous people. We help those. We have so much to share. And we're fortunate that we still have so much to share with one another. And I just remind each and every one of you that a lot of what I'm sharing with you, they're not Native American beliefs or a way of life. It's something that each and every person in this gathering has an option to do, a choice that they can make, how they live their lives. The colonists refused to let go of what they left behind in the old world when they arrived in the new world. We did our best to show them these things, the things that the land, again, still reminds us to this day. But again, we speak in a foreign language. We use a Roman alphabet to spell that foreign language. We live in square architecture that separates us from everything that's naturally occurring in nature. And I just ask people to please think outside the box. It's entirely up to you. So in closing, for those of you who are not familiar with this particular song and dance, which I left it up to my elders to decide what I should do. We have a few options in how we can end such a beautiful ceremony here. And they decided the round dance would be fitting. Many reasons in which we do a round dance. Some call it a welcome dance because they actually do it at the beginning of events to gather. It's a great way to collect our energy before we separate and leave one another. And basically, it's just symbolic of everything that I've been speaking to. Everyone has a place in our circle. There is no hierarchy, again. We're going to hopefully, if we have enough children here, we can even get an inside circle to protect those children and have the adults on the outside. But ultimately, the circle will flow. Whether we step to the right or whether we step to the left, everyone will step in unison and that circle will rotate. That energy is created. That movement creates energy. And as the tempo changes, you may stand in place and redirect your energy, going in the opposite direction. And that part of the dance reminds us of the balance we need to obtain. My cousin Jim just mentioned, as Native people, we often have to harvest things from this earth. As I mentioned, we're harvesting oxygen right now as we speak. But as Indigenous people, we never forget to give back for all that we take from this earth. So to give back our feet on the back of our mothers. I'm a father, and I was very fortunate to have my children walk on my back after a hard day's work. I don't know how many of you parents out there ever enjoyed that, but it's a really highly esteemed privilege to be a parent and have your children walking on your back. So hopefully I can express that same interest in walking on the back of our mother, but also just coming together. Again, differences all set aside, coming together, preferably with complete strangers on each side of us, holding hands with one another. And when we join hands, we're containing all of this positive energy, all of our prayers, all of this peace. And we can radiate it out into the world. However, no one can disrupt that. No one can break that as long as we remain together and joining hands. So I'm going to encourage everyone to participate. The bigger the better, the more the merrier. If possible, in an ideal situation, try to balance out the energies. If you see us gathering and you find more ladies and not enough guys between them, we try to balance out the male and the female energies. So I'm going to leave that up to your group here. But yeah, I think we decided this was one of the flattest open spaces we can do so. So at this time, this is a dance to give thanks for each and every one of our speakers. This is a dance to pray for safe travels for each and every one of you to return home to your loved ones and to return to your fights against all the horrific tragedies. And I also, I just want to close on, again, just reminding folks, world peace goes well beyond us as humans. You have genetically modified foods that I don't even know if our ancestors would recognize them, and they're certainly not as healthy as they once were. The food sovereignty issue, as Native people, we fight for sovereignty, our governments, but it's also our foods fighting for sovereignty. I was happy to see the cattails growing in the pond. For those of you who are familiar, they get choked out by the invasive Phragmites reeds. So there's literally a war, an environmental war that took place from the time the Europeans arrived into present day. And many of these resources, these plants, just like some of our races, we want them to continue well on into the future. So I ask each and every one of you to please think in a much broader perspective when we think of world peace. Please don't forget our plant and animal relatives as well, all of which will be represented in the circle we're about to create. So if you guys can join me over here, we'd like to conclude in a round dance. Yeah, kitap tanamu.
So for those of you who have not participated in this before, a very simple dance. Luckily, Creator only gave us 2 feet, so it's up to you. But we have that recommendation that we start with the left. And the first beats, they're going to be really slow, and that's just giving everyone an opportunity to move that foot in and out. And since it's my left foot, it's also signaling when the beat picks up, I'm going to start moving in that left direction. Okay? So eventually the tempo will slow again, and now you'll notice it's my right foot going in and out on that slow beat, and that's telling me that when the beat picks up, I'm going to go in the right direction. So as I mentioned, we try to go in both directions to maintain balance. So we're asking that you please stop to the left direction first, but please remember we will stop and change direction halfway through the dance. Okay?
Can we do an inner? Put an inner circle in?
She sound like she.
we're gonna make inner circle, bring this in a little closer. So any children who want to come in, we highly recommend kids coming into the center. We're just gonna make the outside circle a little smaller.
Both it up. So we go in there, we go right. We're gonna go right, and they're gonna go left.
Hey!